1. What's up, world? How's it going? I don't know if it's morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, but it's it's midday here. But welcome to the show. Thank you for pressing play. This is actually the second show in a series that I'm pretty excited about. But of course, this is.
You are listening to
Hey, we no mind
with show host Wood.
And this is actually the Hoops and Hops series with my special guest, Greg Kaysen, or G. You can find us. We'll get all into the Twitter handles and whatnot. I think we got a great show coming up for you today. Obviously, it's an off season of basketball, so we don't have a lot of, on the court related stuff or standings and stats to discuss, but we're going to make something out of what we have to work with. We're also going to get into, hoops and hops. The hops is actually a reference to jumping ability at the playground or in the locker room. And then hops is also one of the main ingredients in beer. So if you heard the first show, you would know that G is part of a team of guys that are in the midst of developing their own craft beer. He may be able to get into that again for those that aren't up on it. But we're going to talk about some beer stuff. Or some beer topics. We're gonna get into Showtime. Ray Donovan is actually a Showtime series, right? G?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna talk on Ray Donovan briefly. What's going on with that? And then our lineup of NBA topics actually range from the Gilbert Arenas sighting this week. He got back in the news with his assessment of LeBron James. We'll get into that. I also stumbled across a piece on Vin Baker, former NBA player. He was on multiple teams. He surfaced this week with his pursuit of becoming a Starbucks manager. Don't judge that man. We don't know his story.
He's got 4 kids to feed.
Exactly. So we're going to touch on Vin Baker's new mission. Yesterday, or in the last couple days, the NBA Africa game was played. I believe it was in Johannesburg.
Yes.
But we'll touch on that very briefly, and then we're going to finish up with last show we recapped your 2015 NBA Summer League action from Miami, or from Florida, Orlando actually, Las Vegas, and I think there's also some games held in Utah. But we'll get into to finish it out this week, we'll jump into our 3 NBA storylines that we're looking forward to see how those play out for next season. So that's kind of the gist of that. Just want to send a quick shout out to my team, the One Take Podcast Nation. The list is growing, but you can check us out at onetakepodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter at One Take Podcast N. Pretty good thing. It's been a pretty good arrangement for me becoming a piece of that team.
You're tuned in to a One Take
podcast production.
So, G, you can feel comfortable getting in here whenever. I'm just going to roll through the intro really quickly.
It's your show, man. I didn't want to step in.
That's all right. I trust your judgment. I like the way the rapport was developing in just, 60 minutes of, on air. I like it. So for intro, I just wanted to clean up one thing in my one of my last podcasts with my guest was actually my nephew, but I broke into a couple of current events with some moves in the NFL, and I was trying to make a point that Washington signed outside linebacker Junior Gillette, former New Orleans Saint, who was cut due to some domestic violence case, and Washington quickly brought him in and signed him. I believe it was Friday was when he was actually signed. But I just wondered, was it a function of, or was it, was the Washington Redskins taking a risk on a player with a checkered past? Was that kind of a function of watching what's going on down in Dallas? And I mentioned a couple of names that Jerry Jones has added to the team that has some problems. Obviously, Greg Hardy is one that I also left off.
Right.
But the other one that I left off was this year they drafted they didn't even draft him. The LSU cat fell to them in the as an undrafted free agent. La'el Collins is his name. Now, if you remember back to April, La'el was projected to be at least a first rounder, maybe even top 20.
Right.
And but just days before the NFL draft, his girlfriend, I think, was she pregnant? Maybe it was his baby's mother. Maybe she was pregnant, but she was murdered. And as a result, La'el was actually pulled away from what was going on in Chicago to be questioned by the cops. He ended up not getting drafted. And then after the draft, once people had the story was a little more developed, teams were able to get an idea of whether or not they were messing with damaged goods or not. Dallas actually brought Collins in, signed him, and again, there's another first round talent. If you remember, Grant Gregory from Nebraska, the defensive end, they got him at pick number 60. So that was my suggestion, was that maybe, especially being in NFC East, you're seeing Jerry Jones bring in this team built off of these guys with these off the field issues, but he has first round talent at a big discount. So I just felt like maybe Galette was just something you really just had to strongly consider to kind of stay ahead. I will say that I believe it really bolsters the Washington Redskins defense, which does happen to be my NFL team. I think immediately, this is a guy averaging 11 sacks a year the last 2 years. Fifth year guy going into his sixth. You get him at, I believe, $745,000, I believe, is the league minimum for a man with 4 to 6 years of service. So I can throw that question to you, man. Do you think maybe that played into this decision, or was it's just this beast out here in the market? Let's go get him.
I'm not going to say that I think that it has nothing to do with the Cowboys' moves. I think the Redskins in general, and even the Cowboys to a degree, I think both of their quote-unquote reaches for characters like that are because they can't stall. So for the Cowboys, it's past time for them to take the next step.
Right.
And so they need to do whatever they can for as little as they can to make themselves a contender.
Right.
They need to get further. Like, it's not about them making the playoffs, getting to the second round. They need Super Bowl in that town. And the Redskins, you guys just need to be relevant again.
Thanks, G.
Yeah, I mean, and for something not concerning your coach and RG3.
Right.
You guys need to be relevant for football.
Exactly. And W's.
Right. And so when you get to a position where your team is stagnant for so long, and even when RG3, his first year, like, you guys had a little bit of an upkick,
right,
and then you kind of fell back to regularity. And I think that your GMs and your management are just in a position where they have to take risk.
Right. I agree. I was just trying to say something that you're not hearing on ESPN or Fox Sports. So
I mean, it's a very interesting topic in the sense that there's a lot of ethics that come into play and morality issues when you sign guys, particularly off of domestic violence, when that was such a heated topic this past season and by a lot of people's standards was not handled the best way by the league.
Right. Did you see this video of Junior Galette allegedly striking a female with a belt?
I have not.
We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I was just wondering if that is the case, and if it is him on that video, I'm just wondering why this video has not been circulated at the same frequency that the Ray Rice situation was. I watch a lot of sports on a regular basis, and I don't watch Sports Center as much as I used to, but I was kind of caught off guard that's what the story, the background here is, that he hit a female with a belt, and I haven't seen the video.
Yeah, that is very surprising, and I mean, maybe that's why I've not seen it. Generally, these things do get pushed kind of to the front.
Right.
And again, with the NFL, domestic violence is going to be a big thing for them going forward. And there's already the whole conversation of Tom Brady's suspension and Greg Hardy's suspension. Those shouldn't be close to each other.
Right.
And
theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you are one of the people that believes Greg Hardy to be guilty of those accusations and all of that assault and having weapons surrounding this female after he had hit her and threatened her life, that does seem a bit more serious than, to me, from morality stance, than deflated footballs. But you are messing with the integrity of the game then.
Right.
And there's a whole other thing. I know you guys talked about that on another pod.
Right.
But yeah, I guess there's always going to be a gray area now for anything domestic violence related.
The thing that kills me is, like, we can have some inconsistencies and some shortcomings and some failures, in the political system and in the world of business and whatever. But, man, when it comes to sports, you cannot mess up on rules and regulations and, progressive disciplinary things or programs, procedures. And it's just amazing to me that this topic is being scrutinized the way it is. I will just say that I agree, domestic violence, 4 games, PSIs, 4 games, but I think one thing that we're not looking at, some of Tom Brady's defenders aren't taking into consideration, is that this was the game, the incident in question occurred in the game that decided who went to the Super Bowl. And I just think when you get to messing with the cornerstone of the NFL calendar, their biggest product is that Super Bowl. I just feel like if you've done anything that led to that being compromised, it's going to draw some fire. But not to stick with that, like I said, I just wanted to clarify one of my points on my Washington Redskins take. Moving forward, just a couple of big announcements, man. We can get through the end of this intro, but entertainment wise, man, and we talked about it before we hit record on here, but man, this Tyrese song, Shame.
Yeah.
I just heard it. Actually, I just bought it this morning. I just downloaded it. But I saw the Black Rose album a couple of weeks ago in the stores, and I was considering getting it. I did buy a single or two, but I was not aware of Shame. And you know me, I've told you, I spend a lot of time listening to talk radio, so it just missed me. But man, this Shame song for the world of R&B is a game changer for me.
It's a real throwback style track. It sounds like the era of the old guard in R&B. It sounds like it should have came out. It's got some old Motown feel to it, but
right.
It probably would have surfaced in the late 90s.
Right. But it's a little, I mean, the video was shot very well. I don't know if you've seen that. You can check it out on YouTube on Tyrese's Vivo channel. But it's kind of 5 Heartbeat-ish, or maybe even what was the one movie with Jamie Foxx and Jennifer Hudson, who's actually in the video? Dreamgirls. Yes, or maybe even Prince. More Better Blues with the scene in the dressing room, and it starts out like maybe in the 70s, and then it kind of, the time in the video kind of moves up to a current day situation. But hey man, props to, or a shout out to Tyrese, man, for taking a stance. He has said that this is his last R&B album, But I just salute the guy for taking a chance to make a song that definitely sounds and feels different than anything else that's in the market right now. And